Di situ siasah dan iktisad Nusa pengaruhi alam. Di situ adab dan adat bangsa terjulang. Di situ seni dan warisan budaya berkembang. Di situ mulia nilai akhlak meluaskan amalan.
Kuala Lumpur, the largest city in Malaysia and the nation's capital. Located within the heart of Selangor State, its name literally means muddy capital in Malay because of its establishment in the confluence of the Klang and Gombak rivers. About 100 years ago, this land witnessed the emergence of an intellectual legacy for the society that later became a culture sanctuary known as Taman Budaya, Kuala Lumpur. The building was originally built as Victoria Institution in 1893. The establishment of Kuala Lumpur was believed to begin long ago during the migration of the people from Sumatra, known as the Mandailings, who came to Tanah Melayu across the sea from the west. The place then became their settlement, where they lived with the Aboriginals. Upon their settlements, the place was then developed by the people of Mandailings. The people of Mandailings were forced to travel and refuge in Tanah Melayu to start a new and better life due to a feudalistic war between religious roles in Sumatra.
Actually, all this area, before the political boundaries, just one area. Kat sinilah orang Melayu dulu. Orang Melayu termasuk orang asli itu asal orang Melayu. Ini kawasan penduduk puak-puak Melayu.
Sultan Puasa is a distinctive figure who was responsible to lead the early development of Kuala Lumpur. He initiated the development of Kuala Lumpur by commissioning the construction of infrastructures, including the irrigation canals, bunds, and amenities.
Ini ikut sejarah dan kajian yang buat oleh Razak Lubis lah. Because dia ada keluarkan buku dia berkenaan siapa pembuka Kuala Lumpur, you know. So he has identified Sultan Naposo tu atau Sultan Puasa. Dia orang Mandailing.
In later years, Sultan Puasa befriended the Chinese capitans, including Yap Ah Loy. They were allowed to settle in Kuala Lumpur and participated in the economic activities with the locals. From 1870 until 1940, Tanah Melayu had established a permanent relationship with British in expanding the economy to satisfy the interests of Western capital. The initial economic relations, which through the interference of the local administration, are among the Straits Settlement, Singapore, Penang, and Malacca. It then spreads to the other Malay states. It was during the Klang War in Selangor when the British started to get involved in the administration of Selangor. The British then started building and expanded the railway systems to transport and accommodate the demands of rubber and tin. As the demand for resources increased, administration workers were needed for the export and the trading activities to run smoothly. To fill in the administration vacancy, formal education systems were introduced into Tanah Melayu. In the early stage of education in Tanah Melayu, Quranic-guided Islamic teachings were used primarily by the Malays. Such systems started to grow and contributed to the existence of Islamic boarding schools such as madrasah and other informal Islamic schools that use surau or musalla as the venue for the classes. Years later, Vernacular education systems were initiated after the British colonial divide and rule policy was introduced. Every race was free to open their school with their own syllabus. The British felt that it was enough for each ethnic group to be educated in their own language and learn to accept their roles in life. The arrival of British to Tanah Melayu in the 1800s brought English education system to Tanah Melayu. Such system was divided into two types, namely missionary school that was firmly rejected by the locals and the free school. Free school was established by the government to provide technical and trade skills for the administration sector. The free means that the schools welcome everyone from different races. These schools were Penang Free School Penang, Raffles Institution Singapore, Malacca Free School Malacca, King Edward VII Taiping Perak, Victoria Institution Kuala Lumpur. Taman Budaya Kuala Lumpur was originally built as Victoria Institution, one of the free schools in Tanah Melayu during the colonial era. The building underwent numbers of evolution before it became Taman Budaya Kuala Lumpur. It all started in 1893. Victoria Institution was established by the British Protectorate due to the demand of the mercantile sector and government services workforces who were educated and fluent in English. Sultan Abdul Samad, the Sultan of Selangor, was first to approve the idea of the establishment of English school development that was suggested by the chief of Kuala Lumpur resident, Yap Kwan Seng, Lok Yew, and Tambusami Pillay. They held a public meeting for the establishment of the English school, and it was approved by His Royal Highness Raja Muda and Sir Cecil Clementi Smith. The old Victoria Institution was located on the High Street, which is currently known as Jalan Tun H.S. Lee. The school was designed by the architect A.C.A. Norman, and the two buildings' construction started in 1893, one of which is the school block known as Block 1, and the other is a large bungalow for the headmaster. The building architecture was influenced by Tudor and Gothic style. The Gothic style can be seen on its pointed arches, while the Tudor style can be characterized by the decorative gable with half timber exposed on plastered gables. The first construction started in 1893 when the strip foundation was used for the building foundation. At the initial construction, there were a total of 23 masonry columns supporting the building. Among the columns, 18 columns surrounded the perimeter, transferring load from the roof to the ground, while the other 5 columns were used for the interior space. Concrete floor slab was used and finished with a layer of cement on the ground floor. The hallways that surrounded the main spaces were made of masonry load-bearing walls with a series of Gothic arches creating openings on the walls. The stairs to the first floor were made of stone and located at the southeast, southwest, northwest, and northeast of the building. The timber beams and floorings were made of merbau panels and were used on the first floor, which created vernacular looks to the building. There were also 2 columns made of merbau timber, which were located on the first floor to support the roof. The railings were ornamented with a symmetrically shaped decorative feature known as 4-leaf clover, formed by the outline of 4 circles that partly overlapped and of the same diameter. The ornamented railings surrounded the whole building's first floor. The roof of Block 1 was made of timber roof construction. Using a pitch roof, the roof was constructed by using timber trusses and the queen posts that were connected with joinery. Then, the purlin and batten were laid out to support the clay tiles roof finishes, which protected the building from rain and direct sunlight. Ridges were also installed to cover the uppermost clay tiles to avoid water leakage. The most distinctive Tudor architecture features found in the building were the stucco walls and half-timbering patterns on the roof gables that looked like a tree pattern. Finally, a bell tower was built with openings on the roof ventilation. It was also used to locate the school bell, which was used by the school to signify the beginning and end of class. The open bell tower enables the bell to be visible from the road. In July 1894, the buildings were finished and ready to be operated. Initially, the layout of the building was designed to have a centralized organization which began with the centralized students' hall and surrounded with corridors on the ground floor. On the upper floor, 3 interconnected classrooms were surrounded by the loggia. The school was progressively constructed based on the needs of the school community. In 1898, Block 2 was constructed besides the first block. This new block consisted of 6 classrooms for primary school on the ground floor and teachers' quarters upstairs, while Block 1 housed the kindergarten children. Later in 1902, Block 3 was added behind Block 2. This new block consisted of a laboratory and 3 classrooms. In addition to that, a gymnasium was built besides Block 3. It was designed in Roman-style temple with tall columns, 2 at the front and back and 4 on each side. 7 years later, in 1909, Block 4 was constructed about 50 meters across the field behind Block 1. This building occupied the high school students and consisted of 3 classrooms on the ground floor. The overcrowding of students in the school and the extensive floods occurrence had caused the school to be frequently closed. Eventually, it led to a decision to relocate Victoria Institution to a new site on Petaling Hill. In 1930, the building was occupied by the students of Sekolah Teknik Kuala Lumpur. It changed its name to Kuala Lumpur Technical College, where the students of Sekolah Teknik furthered their studies to a higher level. In 1939, due to the frequency of flood occurrence, the government took an initiative to straighten the Klang River. Consequently, this construction had led to the demolition of the headmaster's house. Later in 1954, the Kuala Lumpur Technical College moved out to Jalan Gurni, which is currently known as Jalan Semara, upholding the name of University Technology Malaysia (UTM). In 1955, the Setapak High School occupied the building. It was an all-boys school for the exception of the co-ed 6th form before they moved to Setapak in 1957. After Malaysia independence in 1957, the building function was converted to a cultural centre in 1958. The change in typology was believed to increase the opportunity of the building. It was also believed that the value of the building would increase as a cultural centre in the busy streets of Kuala Lumpur. During this era, some renovations were made to fulfill the needs of a cultural centre. Some parts of the walls were covered with timber walls. The L-shaped staircase at the northwest side of the building had been removed. Louvered windows were used and doors were added at every staircase to the first floor. The bell tower along the school bell were also removed. The roof material was changed to metal decking. Furthermore, in 1963, Jalan Kinabalu flyover, which was the first flyover in Malaysia, was built next to the building to cater the overcrowding and traffic congestion in Kuala Lumpur. The flyover construction started in 1963 and opened to traffic in August 1965, which then became a part of Kuala Lumpur Inner Ring Road system. This road development had caused the demolition of Block 2, 3, 4 and the gymnasium building, leaving Block 1 to stand alone in a contracted site. Soon after, Kuala Lumpur was hit with a heavy monsoon rain which swelled Klang, Batu and Gombak rivers. This once again sunk the building. Soon, Kuala Lumpur City Hall, or DBKL, took over the building and retained it as a cultural centre that provided various art and cultural activities. It was known as the Panggung Drama or Pusat Seni during that time. On the 26th of July 1999, a tragedy happened to the 106-year-old then historical building. It was engulfed by fire and destroyed almost the entire original structure. The roof and timber material had been pulverized and stoneworks were damaged. This tragedy was believed to be caused by a street drug addicts who trespassed into the building. In 2002, restoration works for the remaining Block 1 took place. The The design of the building exterior was believed to be as close to its original design. JTK Consult, a structural specialist consultant, was responsible for providing the necessary upgrading requirements while maintaining the historical significance of the structure and supervising the upgrading works on the remaining Block 1.
So basically, we had when we went to site, the structure was practically destroyed by fire. So only the base was there, and a couple of I think part of the roof was there. The bell tower had all gone. There was nothing there. So based on photos and proportioning, then we came up with the design. But because the structure was a school, and they wanted to use it as a theatre, so there was a change of use.
In the present, the foundation was strengthened by adding a pile and pad foundation in the middle of the building. The building was restored with an auditorium in the centralized hall for cultural performances while maintaining the exterior facade to fulfill the adaptive reuse of the historical building. This had brought changes to the first floor of the building and also its structural columns. The columns on the first floor were removed to create voids for the auditorium, and, as a result, there was a need for reinforced columns to support the roof above the new double-volume auditorium. In response to the needs, new steel columns were added to the building structure. Thus, the load of the current building was supported by these steel columns in between the acoustic panels. The exterior of the flooring was finished with tiles on the ground floor, while the interior was finished with carpet. On the first floor, floor joist planks were used on the corridor around the auditorium. Several changes were also made to the building walls. First, both spaces on the ground and first floor were enclosed with load-bearing walls and then followed by the installation of acoustic panels. Plus, reinforced steel bars were drilled into the wall through the arches using an underpinning method to strengthen the wall after the fire happened. After the removal of the middle column on the first floor, the roof structure was redesigned, yet still maintaining the exterior roof finishes as it was in 1893. The connections of the queen posts were enhanced by using steel plates. They tried to mimic the roof to its exact original shape and material. However, only the shape was conserved using Chinese clay tiles. Besides that, the gable end ornamentations were simplified from its original pattern but still maintained the Tudor architectural styles. The hardwood timber false door was installed on the first floor because there were door slots on the first floor and of the double volume of the interior space, making the door inaccessible. The window materials remained the same as the original building. The stairs and bell tower that were removed from the 1960s era were rebuilt by JTK Consultant in order to restore its original form when it was Victoria Institution. However, the bell tower's opening is now closed to prevent water leakage. Later in 2003, this building was registered as a heritage building by Jabatan Warisan Negara.
Dia merupakan bangunan warisan yang telah digazetkan oleh Jabatan Warisan Negara melalui Akta Warisan Akta 645 yang telah digazetkan pada tahun 2006.
Currently, the building has been used as Taman Budaya Kuala Lumpur since 2005 and administered by the National Department of Culture and Arts (JKKN). The double-volume auditorium remained to suit its function as a performing arts theatre. It operates as a cultural center, which provides a platform for artists to be involved in the economic field through cultural arts activities. The involvement of British has brought many changes, especially in the built environment, to develop Tanah Melayu during their colonization. Taman Budaya is one of the historical buildings that have witnessed the evolution of the community and Tanah Melayu itself. Since its first establishment as the Victoria Institution, it served the community as a free school to train the locals in English literature to secure their places in administration and mercantile sectors. The building continuously changed its owner after the Victoria Institution moved out in 1929 as an institutional building until the Tanah Melayu achieved its independence. Later, as the movement of patriotism in Tanah Melayu was increasing, the building was being used as a cultural center to unite communities of various races. After the fire tragedy in 1999, the reconstruction of the building was initiated and several adjustments were made to the interior to fulfill the adaptive reuse of the building as an auditorium. To sum up, the building functions are well defined throughout history. As a place for learning activities in the early years, the building later continues to unite the community through cultural activities carried out in recent years.